Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 116. This week, we talk with Frank Krueger about continuous, demotivational products that don't work, a website that makes it easy to start developer arguments, and Jason falls in love with his Surface Book.
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Infragistics, providing tools and solutions to accelerate design, development, insights, and collaboration for any organization.
This week we have Frank Krueger, independent mobile app developer and co-host of Merge Conflict. How's it going, Frank?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've actually we've mentioned you on the last couple episodes because of this continuous app.
Yeah.
So we're like super excited because we had Lori Lalonde on. Was that the last episode, Carl? No,
No, that was 2 episodes ago. She mentioned you.
Yeah.
I heard about that from a third party. They're like, oh, you got to listen to this. She's totally promoting you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, she said she was a huge fangirl. And then we had Scott Hunter on, and he's like, oh, have you seen this app, Continuous? So, man, you guys you're just, not you guys, like you, you're just taking like the world by storm. Everybody knows about this. And seriously, I tweeted this to you. I've been walking around the Microsoft campus showing it to everybody who would look at it. Like, check this out. And there's like 10% of people that that just don't get it at all. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever. And then there's like another, I think about half the people at first, they're like, oh, okay. Like my intern, he was looking at it and he's like, oh, okay. And then he actually went back to what he was working on and we were chatting about what he was working on. And he stops all of a sudden. He's like, wait a second. It's like, it's running in the, anyway. So we'll talk about it. But like all of us, like it took about 5 minutes and then his like brain exploded in his head while he was working on something else, which was just really phenomenal.
Well, I'd like to make the judgment. Is he a millennial? So like maybe a little more iPad aware.
yeah. Like he's finishing up school right now, or college right now. So yeah. I think so. I don't know the exact time frames, but yeah, I believe he is. So okay, so Carl, what's going on? You here to pimp that conference again?
Yes, I am. And in fact, if you're watching video, you can see me bounce on my ball wearing my That Conference shirt. And I'll be there. I'll be handing out lots of swag, like our new coffee mugs to some chosen people. And we got just a lot of other things that we're looking forward to do. A lot of people we want to interview. If you have anybody that you know is going to be there, there's a lot of speakers, a lot of cool people. Tell us who they are so we can make sure that we interview all the people that you want to hear about. I mean, we're there to have fun ourselves, but we're also there to bring valuable content back to you. So, definitely reach out to us.
Yep.
And speaking of which, I posted out a video with both our new mug. Mm-hmm. Video shot right here.
Yep.
And right next to last year's That Conference coffee mug. And just ask who's going to be there. And just for replying to that tweet, Angela Dugan on Twitter said, I'll be there. And we're looking forward to seeing you too, Angela. So not only will we see you there, but you will also be receiving an Infragistics Ultimate license. So if you want to get mentioned on the show, like Angela, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com, comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher. We really like those 5-star iTunes reviews. And if we select yours, you will win this same license.
You just picked her because she checked all the boxes because it was like, responded to you on Twitter, had That Conference in there, had MS Dev Show in there. So, yep, that's how it works, though.
Hey, we pander just as much as everybody else.
Yeah, it's funny, and I don't think I've kept up as well on this as of late, but you, me, and I think the MS Dev Show account, like anytime anybody mentions the show, like we pretty much all three of us retweet it. Like it's pretty much a certainty. As long as you don't say something really horrible, like you could say something just a little bad and I'd probably still retweet it. But as long as it's not horribly bad, I will retweet it.
And I haven't seen any comments like that anyway. So.
No, we haven't. No, they're always awesome. So thank all of you very much. Okay, so news. What do we got here? How to write unmaintainable code.
So just look at Jason's GitHub account, I think. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. I quit, Carl.
No, Yeah,
Do we really need a tutorial on this? I haven't read the whole thing. But,
well, and here's
this
the
is my
thing.
default state.
Yeah, it's not just a tutorial. Like this is like a GitHub repo of like, so we're not bashing a person. Like it was designed to like be a place where you put all of these things. And whenever you come up with more rules, you can actually submit a pull request to this and submit them. So this thing is like, I don't know, dozens of pages long of all the things that that if you want to be a bad developer, this is how you can do it.
I used to be a fan of the daily WTF.
Yeah.
Kind of along those lines.
Yeah.
It's always fun to see counterexamples.
Oh my God. I'm just having a lot of horrible memories from that. Is that still around? It must be, huh? It just sort of
I
went
guess
downhill.
so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, unfortunately. I have to go check it out. Maybe they got good again.
Yeah, so I really don't want to comment too much about this, not only because it's kind of been done, but like if we were to print this out, this is probably like a small book in and of itself. This page just keeps going and going and going. And it's pretty well done. So literally, I don't think you could do everything in here.
Yeah, single letter variable names. They have a lot of different naming things, or
commenting the obvious, adding one to I.
I don't know. As I scroll through this, I've done each one. Yeah. In the aggregate, I think I might have hit a good 90% here.
I love this. Names from mathematics. Choose variable names that masquerade as mathematical operators. So they have open paren as a word equals. They have an actual slash, but then they have the word slash plus the word asterisk, and then a parentheses, and then divided by equals the word. If that made any sense to you, you'd almost have to look at it. And then the other one, bedazzling names. Mary Poppins equals Superman plus Starship divided by God. Okay, that would actually be pretty cool.
I like this one, semicolons. Always use semicolons whenever they are syntactically allowed. I had a boss that did that. It was just, he was an assembly programmer and everything had semicolons.
That's awesome. And then you may as well just put it on one line at the same point and use more than one. Like, you can use more than one.
Handle it.
In most actually JavaScript it's at least 0, but in most languages at least 1, right? So you can go above, like one piece of flair is the minimum. Like that's what everybody's expected to use, but you can go above and beyond. Look busy, fast copy. Yeah, that's crazy. Does nothing. They have a whole bunch of code in here that just does nothing. Hide instances with synonyms. Okay. I am going to have to read through this entire thing. Lie in the comments. That's awesome. You don't have to actively lie. Just fail to keep comments up to date with the code. Well, that's what everybody does. Okay. Anyway, I can't keep reading this. And this will take hours. Okay.
This all day long.
Let's move on. Motivational products don't work, but demotivator products don't work even better.
So somebody passed this on to me through a Slack channel that I was at. So I can't take credit for finding this, but we've all seen those like motivational posters. They got the black backgrounds. They've got like one word and big color and like a little description underneath. But this one shows something like wishes. When you wish upon a falling star, your dreams can come true. Unless it's really a meteorite hurtling towards Earth, which will destroy all life. Then you're pretty much hosed no matter what you wish for. Unless it's for death by meteor.
Meteor for president 2016.
Yeah, but there's tons of these, and once again, you can get lost for quite a long time trying to just read all of these.
I love this. There's a picture of a spork, and it says multitasking, the art of doing twice as much as you should, half as well as you could. And it should be a spork IF, though, although then it would be a third, so I guess it wouldn't flow as well. Any of the other ones you want to point out there, Carl?
No, there's a lot of good ones. And
can you buy, like, what's the deal here?
Yes.
I can buy these?
Yeah, so you can buy those, or you can get a high quality one to print out on your own, but you can get them as posters and mugs and t-shirts. So this is an actual site trying to make money, but these are hilarious either way.
Can you download them for free?
I have not tried.
Just because, yeah, I mean, I don't mind like paying for a good product, but like I have photo places I go through that I know do a good job that did like my other posters. So
maybe they'll have digital purchases, something like that.
Yeah. I'll have to take a look at that. Okay, what do we got next here? Salary transparency at Stack Overflow. So they have a little calculator here. So if you want to see how much you make at Stack Overflow, so Frank,
I just went through it.
Yeah, if you want to give up the independent gig.
Yeah, we're doing okay as an independent. Yeah. I'll just say that. So after going through the calculator, I'm like, okay, good.
This is yeah.
So this is if you work at Joel's company. Is that what this is?
Well,
Or is
it
this
says
industry?
so Stack Overflow.
Do they do a salary survey also? Whatever.
Well, they have their like annual survey. I don't know if they do it like through the company. But they have an annual survey that covers salaries, I believe. But let's just put it this way. So they're I'm not saying I'm not going to say if they're good or bad. I mean, you can go out there and kind of judge for yourself. But I will say like this is one of the companies I think this and I think this one's like a wholly owned subsidiary of Fog Creek Software. I guess I'm not completely sure how the whole thing is structured anymore, but I will say that I think that they have a lot of, Joel has talked in the past whenever they have a job posting, like he gets like hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. So, I mean, they're very well known and the advantage of having a well-known company is I think it's a lot easier to find people. So that obviously plays into the whole supply demand equation. Plus, they just make it an awesome place to work, and it's hard to, this almost does them a disservice because it doesn't factor in those things. I mean, I've had like a job that paid, good in cash, but then it had horrible benefits. And then, I've had a job that had really good benefits and the pay was okay. And it's way more complicated. So anybody listening to this show that's like sort of getting started in the field, like it's a really difficult equation to look at. Like you have to factor in your happiness. You have to factor in, like I said, the benefits, like 401k and healthcare and all that. Those things are extremely expensive. So, I don't know. It's got to be tough whenever you're getting started out trying to compare places. But
another thing
that's the salary alone.
Yeah, another thing that's you have to consider too is a lot of the times when you're looking at like Stack Overflow, Microsoft, Google, especially for the lower end positions, they're going to be getting compensated better than, a random development shop in the Midwest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Shortly after this came out, I was talking to a few people online who had saw this and like, hey, I've, been a developer for 1 year and this is like double my salary. And I'm like, well, that's what you get at those kinds of places.
Yeah, move to New York and live in a 150 square foot apartment and
but you're in Hell's Kitchen. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So there's different, there really are different like tech areas. And then the competition in those areas, I think, determines a lot of this as well and determines the environment because there's like the whole Silicon Valley area. And then there's just sort of like the West Coast in general. And, at Microsoft, what helps, keep things up is the fact that Amazon is in the same city. You also have Boeing and, a lot of other tech companies here. So, if Microsoft decided to cut everybody's salary in half, people have other options. So, it really depends where you're geographically located. If you can work remote, then that sort of changes the whole equation. And I think that's what's going to really help I really advance the whole thing. I think, over the next couple of years is really working from home. I'm hoping, but so this is just, more transparency. We always like Buffer because they actually publish individual salaries, but this is a calculator, which I think is about just as useful.
And they said that they were inspired by Buffer. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, Buffer, like, they're basically just running a company like with complete transparency, which is pretty unheard of, and it feels so weird. It's so strange, and it's like I'm not sure why, but it's just so unusual. But I love
the transparency is affecting me. I just learned an important lesson. The difference between 1 year of experience and 15 years of experience is only about $25,000. So I just learned that I shouldn't have spent all this time. I should have just spent a year and got a job.
That's absurd. I'm just going to say it now. And one of these, I'm actually going to switch the order of the news here. Which one is it? I want to say, which one is it here? I think actually, you know what? I think it's actually the new one here. Why experts make bad teachers. I think this is the one. Well, anyway, the next title of the title of the next news item is why experts make bad teachers. So let's talk about this one. And do you want to talk about this one, Carl, first?
Yeah. So to kind of sum this up, it says, when we learn things, the things that really make it stick in our minds are kind of the abstractions that we build upon things. They go through this example about, a child learning what a dog is.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's through these concrete, experiences that they have running into dogs. They learn like what different colors dogs can be, which ones bark, which ones don't. And in the end, you build up an internal model in your head. That's the sum of all those abstractions. Like there are multiple different colored dogs, some bark, some don't, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, the knowledge that we have, the knowledge when you're trying to learn something, you're trying to learn what those kind of rule sets are. But when somebody just gives you that rule set, it's really hard to remember. And one of the things that they kind of do in order to illustrate that is they show you kind of the rules that they built up for that dog thing, but later on they have a thing that says there's rules for let me get it right here. It says Binkles can navigate, except large Binkles with spots. Binkles have long placards and whip their snoblats when they get excited. Like how easy is that to remember? Like if you've never run across them before.
That sounds like standard biology class.
Yeah, biology 101, Carl.
And the thing is, because you're hearing these rules without the concrete examples, it's harder to remember them. Yep. And getting back to the title of the article, when you have an expert, they kind of just know these rules, but they've forgotten the experiences that have helped them remember those rules. And because they've forgotten that, it's hard for them to create, those experiences for you to, have those again to build upon. So
here's why I wanted to talk about this one. And I'm going back to you, Frank. I wanted to make it clear I wasn't just cutting you off. So the example that I always keep in my head is chess, and I really don't know anything about chess, so it's really weird that I always use this as an example. But I think everybody can relate to it, whether they understand chess or not. So if you look, there's a couple things. If you look at the board and you watch, like if you don't know chess at all and you watch people play like experts, like they're always thinking like 10 moves ahead, and you're like, how is that possible? Because if you look at like the brute force approach to it, it's impossible. There's no human that can think a number of moves ahead. But the thing is, their brain has organized itself in such a way to see all these patterns, and they're thinking in abstractions. They're thinking like, I'm going to pull move, I don't know, they have the fancy names, right? But I'm going to do move B, and then they're either going to do D, E, or F in response. And then if they do D, I'm going to do this, that's how they're thinking. And they think in more patterns, and like, it's just sort of built into their brain at that point. And that builds on this idea that, you have to, what is it? There's a certain number of hours to become an expert at something. And I think it generally aligns to like 10 years. Like you have to do something for 10 years to become an expert at something. And it's not just that you like memorize like all the different, syntax of a particular programming language or something, sort of bring it back to programming. It has nothing to do with that. There's just something there. And working with my intern, like this guy, he's so smart. Yeah, he's like way smarter than me. And he is just like, it's amazing the work that he's doing. And he can just run circles around me writing certain types of code. But if you could sort of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, he doesn't have that basis of that decade of experience to sort of, be able to feel out like, he's like, oh, I'm going to do it this way. I'm like, no, that's a bad idea. He goes, why? I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm like, I just know that it's not going to work. and I've done that, and I'll tell somebody that, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm going to do it anyway. And they come back and they're like, oh, here's why. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Like it's just, my brain has been reorganized in such a way that I know where the landmines are. I don't even necessarily know why I'm making the decisions I am. You just sort of been trained that way. So it's funny, the salary difference, you said, $25,000. Yeah. I think that seems crazy.
Not representative. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe they're just good at, and there's this whole argument about how you should treat junior developers. Should you just throw them in? And I kind of think you should just throw them in and have them work with everybody else. Don't call them like junior developers, because it's kind of silly. But the reality is like they might be amazing at the things that they're doing, but they also need that other component, that 10-year experience component from the rest of the people on the team. And somehow you have to figure out how to leverage both of those. So it could be that Stack Overflow is just, they've done a really good job of just being able to mix those two together. And at the end of the day, their value is relatively the same. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually completely buy that answer.
Yeah.
Everything I've seen is it's a company of really genius people. So
Yeah.
I kind of buy into that.
Yeah. I'm just my intern. He's just he's just scary smart. Yeah, it's awesome. Like, 'cause Microsoft, we hired just tons and tons of interns, and it's just awesome to see it. They're just doing really awesome things. Okay. Developer arguments. Oh, this is good. We should make this a part of the show, Carl. So if you go to developerarguments.com, you can see this. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so you go there and it just gives you, like, I think the theme of the site is, if you have a few minutes at work or whatever, why not start an argument? And this just gives you something to argue about. Like, when I go here, it just kind of throws up a random one, like less versus SAS. I mean, once you click a button,
text
native
editor
versus web.
IDE.
CoffeeScript versus JavaScript.
Oh,
Mac OS X or Mac OS 10.
Oh, wait, this one's for me. Object-oriented programming versus functional programming.
Yeah. iOS versus Android. There's got to be tabs versus spaces in here somewhere. Although I don't know if you saw that episode, Frank. It was the last episode.
I was just listening to it, so I didn't get to the punchline though. Is there a performance difference or not?
Yes, absolutely. So it was in Firefox like 49. It was because of an optimization they had in there. Tabs were like horrendously slow compared to spaces, which is funny because they're actually technically smaller.
All the JavaScript people wrote it.
But so it was just a temporary fluke. So we wanted to sensationalize it and clickbait it. So, so the last thing, which is big news to me, is I got a Surface Book. Which, let me undock it here. Da-da-da-da.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love this thing. So here's how thin it is. Well, anyway, you can go look at pictures or whatever. But this machine. So I wasn't even looking for a new machine. Work, they sent me a thing. They're like, oh, you've had your existing machine for 38 months, pick out a new one, and they give me a list. And I saw the Surface Book on there, and I talked to a few people, and let's just put it this way. A lot of people at Microsoft have the Surface Book. So it's going to be a very well supported machine. So I got it. And man, I love this thing like 10 times more than I thought. Like, I knew I'd like it, but I really like it. The trackpad, I don't know how much OS 10 stuff you do, but the, Mac, I don't know how they do this. It's like the fire of that one volcano or whatever. It's how they make them or something. But the so
vulcanization.
I'm really bad at all these references. No. Like the Apple trackpad is just magical. Like, I think there's just literal magic in there. I mean, if there's any magic on this planet, it's like in that trackpad, right? and nobody has been able to come close to that. The Surface Book gets, I don't know, I'm trying to quantify it, but let's just say it's 90% as good, which is far and away better than anything else on the planet. So it's like, if it was in a chart, Apple would be way at the top, and then the Surface Book would be a close second, and then every other would be it would be
way at the bottom.
Yeah,
10%.
like 0.4 pixels, so it would actually round to zero, right? So anyway, the trackpad is good. This thing is super thin. My Mac Pro, my complaint on it is this sharp edge on the front. So my wrists, it digs. In fact, there's a red line there. It's digs into my wrists. Whereas the Surface Book, I don't have that issue. It's fast. It's got the i7. I wish there was a quad core option, but it's just dual core. When it is on your lap, you don't run into this issue. I guess this is sort of a winter versus summer thing, but in the summer, you don't get a hot lap because the whole CPU and everything is actually up in the up in the top part. So you don't.
So that
burn
means
your
in
legs.
winter. That means in winter you don't get a hot lap.
Yeah, I know, that's the only thing. Well, you can put a blanket on or something. That's the thing. But you can't in the winter. I mean, the summer. What are you going to do? I mean, you're sitting there. There's so many times I'm sitting there with my Mac. I'm just sweating because the thing's on my lap. And you can buy those goofy things. I don't know. I don't need to deal around with that. And then I have the Surface Dock, which is the perfect implementation of a dock because it's got the magnetic. We'll call it MagSafe, which I know is patented by Apple or whatever. But just to sort of relate to that, it's magnetic, right? You can just rip it off of there and it pops off. But that single magnetic connector gives you power. It gives you gigabit Ethernet. It gives you dual display port, mini display port. It gives you, I think, 4 USB 3 ports. It gives you the audio port. So I have 2 external monitors here. One is 4K. And I plug that single thing in. It's like now it's like full desktop. So I actually use this now instead of my desktop, and I've used my Mac about 90% less. So I think that's kind of the real test. My Mac, I rarely use. Like if I could run Final Cut Pro on this Surface Book, it would be like all over from my Mac. I would sell it and happily cash out.
So I have to ask the big question: how's the hinge on it? That hinge is all I stare at when I see one of these.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you don't even think about it. Like
you don't even think about it.
No, I just open and close it. People complain about that gap.
It freaks me out. I like every OCD part of me. I just can't look at that gap as an engineer. I'm just like, why?
So here's the thing though. Like this is a Microsoft owned asset. I don't care if it breaks. Right. So like and it sounds kind of bad, but like if I had the device, I'd probably buy like a warranty so that I could do the same thing. But the reality is if this thing after even 2 years, because they give it to me for 3 years, right? Like they have to support it for that entire lifespan. I can sit there and open and close it all day long. Like I don't worry about it. If it breaks, I take it in. We have this thing called TechLink. You walk in and they're just like they're awesome. Like they'll either replace it or they've had to replace the keyboard for me in the past, and they can do it in 5 minutes. So we just have really good IT support.
So that's funny. I wasn't even thinking about the quality of it. I was purely from an aesthetic. How do you handle it sitting in a room, and when you walk in that room and you see it across the way, how does it look to you?
Yeah. Oh, I don't. I think it looks great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it looks great. And then this Windows Hello. I've never had a machine with this. Oh my God. And we have to have a way to do this on the desktop. But I just look at the computer and it logs in, and it works so freaking well. The only time I've run into issues, like I've tried it like in the dark a couple times actually. Like you just look at it and it unlocks like instantly because it uses infrared and like it figures out like 3D and all that good stuff. The only time I had issues is when my blinds were sort of half open and it actually drew like white lines on my face. I think, if it has enough light, I think it doesn't use the infrared, or I don't know how that works because it has the 2 different cameras. But it was just like, it's like, I'm not sure. It's trying to figure it out. Like, because it has all these like cute sayings and it's like, I think it's you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I had to
I
look
need one of
closer.
these.
Other than that, like it is like perfect every time. Like the only issue I had, if I'm like 3 feet away from it, because it is sitting way back on my desk because I have it hooked to the monitors, it will take longer. But if I'm 2 feet away, it's like a fraction of a second every time. I mean, it's just it's the greatest feature ever. Not even have to touch it. I just look at it and it works. So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else I want to talk about on this thing. I don't use the pen.
You use Visual Studio on it away from a monitor?
I have not done. Oh, actually, no. But here's the thing. Here was the other thing that I was missing from the Macworld. So I put the anniversary update on here, and it now has. So it has the virtual desktops, but it has the finger swipe where you'd normally use 4. I switch it to 3. I think 4 that's just too many fingers. So I use 3, and with it going just like you do on a Mac. I do that all the time. I can do it on Windows exactly the same. It works magnificently. So that's the other thing. So even running Visual Studio, like this has a good sized monitor. It's the high DPI monitor. Everything looks just amazing on it. And the fact that you can do multiple desktops, like I tend to put, it's still not quite as good as the window management on OS 10 yet, because I can't pin like all my development tools in my second screen, because I always like doing that. So I would open up like VS Code and it'd go, it'd switch over to the second screen, open that. I'd have my browser like in the first one so I could reference some things and keep switching back and forth, kind of like you do on your desktop, right? Like you probably favor one screen for your editor and another for your browser, for example. So it doesn't do that. But that's not a big deal. You just go over to that screen, you open it up, and then it's there. Just the fact that it has it and I can swipe it that quickly is just life-changing. So this is just like my one machine that goes everywhere. I haven't had any issues with like docking and undocking it. Standby works great, or works pretty good in the anniversary update. I haven't done a lot of testing with it. I was talking to, I don't know much I can say, but I'll just put it this way. Jason Short, he was on the show a long time ago talking, he's on the Windows team now, and he's doing some great stuff over there. So he needs to keep up the great work. He's doing an awesome job. So yeah, I love the machine. Love it. I love it way more than what I thought I would. I think it's near perfect. Yeah, I don't know. Any questions other than that?
I like just the Surface, and so I've always debated whether to get just a Surface or whether to get this laptop guy.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason to get a Surface, I would think, because the Surface actually weighs more than like the tablet portion of this. I was like, well, what the heck do I do on a plane? I always use the Surface because it had the kickstand. Well, you undock the screen on this and you flip it around and you put it in tent mode. So I'll be able to put that on the tray.
Yeah, cool.
And then watch movies on it. And it's a bigger screen, so I actually think it'll be better for movies. And then I can always flip it around and put it back on and hook up the GPU and everything, and then actually get some work done on the plane. And the fact that it's like smaller than my MacBook Pro, I think I can actually get work done on a plane. So I'm traveling the end of this week. But I actually suspect this will be a better plane machine than my combination of Surface Pro 3 and MacBook Pro. Plus, I don't have to like sort of pick and choose. So yeah, I got the i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and the half terabyte hard drive. So I'm pretty happy with that configuration. Okay, well, we talked about the news in my Surface Book for a long time. So let's get to talking about Continuous, because this is such a cool project. So I guess where I wanted to start, you had this tweet, and you even reference it. And I love this. You had this tweet back. It was December 31st. 2015. I resolved to use my iPad Pro for software development in 2016. Like, what was the deal with that? Was that serious? Was that sort of joking? Like in hindsight, it seems far more serious now, but at the time, I totally would have dismissed that.
Yeah, I think most people did. Well, at the time, just so you know my state of mind, everyone was having the grand debate of whether you should make resolutions for the new year or not. Everyone's kind of decided, don't do it. Don't make resolutions. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I'm kind of a contrarian, so that means I do have to make a resolution now. So I had to decide what it was going to be. And at this time, I had the iPad Pro. Yeah. And I was just kind of in love with it as a device. I'm just kind of a technologist. I just like pretty things that that work very well. It's overpowered. It has a gorgeous screen. It's just a really good iPad, especially with the pen and everything. Mm-hmm. But I was getting kind of bored on it because you can only play games for so long. You can only watch videos for so long. Eventually, I like to do.
And that's just about all that the iPad is great for.
Yeah, I'll argue that. I mean, ever since 2010, I've been trying to write productivity apps for it. I've been always trying to push it to be a creation device. Yeah. And Apple's finally buying into that argument too. But you're right. 99% of everything is sit back and watch.
Yeah.
So I wanted something for real that I could actually stretch my mind with. And I said, well, what do I really want? What I really want is an IDE that does .NET. And so, yeah, it was
you're crazy. That's basically what we're hearing. I
didn't know what form it would take. Honestly, I probably would have been happy with a text editor that clouded something to some cloud compiler or whatever. I just wanted some kind of C# on it.
Okay.
So I guess that leads us to the next thing is, what is Continuous for those in our audience that don't know, and kind of, what is that to you, and, what are the pieces underneath that make it continuous?
So Continuous is an IDE for the iPad that compiles C# and F# code. So 2 .NET languages. I'd like to get more in there, but those 2 for now. I keep calling it an IDE because I really want to emphasize that I'm not trying to make like a little toy editor here or a viewer or something like that. I actually want this to be a tool, something that you can use. And it actually borrows a lot of UI features from classic Visual Studio, MonoDevelop, Xamarin Studio, whatever it's called. So you have a normal project panel with your solutions. You have text editor with code completion. Thank you for the screenshot.
No, it's a real iPad. Yeah, if you have the video feed, you can actually see what it looks like.
Animated.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and then so I wanted a standard IDE because I've been using these IDEs forever, but then I wanted to be a little special. It's got to be special somehow, and so I went for this continuous part where it's continuously building and trying to continuously run your app, so that it feels like you're always working with live objects instead of super stretched and abstracted away from the live execution environment. I wanted you right in there. And so
I love writing code and then building and then, deploying and then waiting for the app to launch and then going through and flipping through my screens and then realizing that I totally wrote it wrong. I enjoy that.
My first professional programming job, I was writing embedded code. I would have to write the code, compile it. put it onto a floppy disk, carry it over to the EEPROM burner, pull an EEPROM out, burn it to an EEPROM, walk it over to the car, put it in the car, turn the ignition on the car, and see if my code worked. I think ever since that experience, I've been just trying to shorten that cycle.
Yeah. Talk about an extreme example. Yeah.
Yeah, that really teaches you a lot of lessons in programming when you have that kind of a delay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI tools and enterprise mobility solutions, Share Plus and Report Plus, enable high-performance apps on any device, faster data insights, simplified collaboration, and market-leading security, all backed by comprehensive support. With Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI development toolkit, you can ensure mission-critical applications delivering a superior user experience on the desktop, web, and native device environments for iOS and Android. With the latest BI tools, wow your users with dashboards providing the data insights that they need when and where they need it, all at a low total cost of ownership. Try it today. Download a free trial at Infragistics.com and follow them for the latest updates in UX and UI development, reporting, and collaboration at Infragistics on Twitter. And remember, each week, if we pick your comment on the show, you will get a free copy of Infragistics' Ultimate UX and UI toolset.
So Continuous's delay right now is about 1/3 of a millisecond. So from the time you type a character, 1/3 of a second, it's actually running.
Okay, so this iPad here is not mine. This is actually owned by Microsoft, as seen by the sticker on the back. Should I just throw all my computers away and just go get an iPad then?
Well, we just had that awesome segment on your awesome computer. So, no, I guess not.
Okay, I'll keep it then.
When you sent me this question, my answer was obviously yes. But you kind of won me over with that thing. It's a nice machine. No, but I think that there's always going to be a place for the 30-inch monitor when programming. Mm-hmm. But I want a good experience on smaller devices, and that's what I'm trying to provide.
Actually, I never thought of that. So I know with Windows and Windows Phone, like you can hook up an external display. I know that you can output like video over like an iPad, but is there a way to actually hook up an external monitor and like run this app on there or not?
This is the multi-monitor question.
Okay.
So I have two answers. One's funny and one's for real. The for real one is yes, apps can support it. Ever since like iOS 4, you've been able to plug an external display in. By default, it just mirrors your app. But if the app developer opts in, they can put a whole nother window, a whole nother GUI up on the other display. Okay. The problem is there's no input for that other display. It's just a T.
Oh, yeah, because there's no mouse cursor.
Yeah,
over there.
So for something like Continuous, I could still use it. I could put the running app maybe on the other display. But no, the truth is, in the iPad world, if you want 2 screens, you buy 2 iPads. And if you want a third screen, you buy a 6 Plus. It's a multi-iPad world. It's a multi-screen world. And it's a joke, but I think honestly in the future it's going to be like that. I think we will be Captain Picard with 20 iPads on his desk or Surfaces, whatever they happen to be.
I know, isn't that so funny? Like, yeah, go back and watch that, and it's like, he picks this one up. He's like, oh wait, this isn't the book I was reading. That one's over here.
Well, we all know navigating in these things is a pain in the butt. So once the app is loaded, you just go to the next iPad.
Yeah, just root on the next iPad. And with Apple's pricing model, that's pretty easy to do. The iPad Pro is very
maybe reasonable. Androids.
Yeah, some cheap Android tablets, Amazon Fire tablets.
Yeah.
So how are you getting Continuous to work? Is it because of the open source nature of like some of the compilers nowadays and all of the work that Xamarin's done in that area as well? Or you doing just a lot of stuff on your own?
I would say 2/3, 1/3, something like that. So definitely this wouldn't be possible without F#'s compiler being open source. That was done a few years ago. And it also takes advantage of Roslyn, the C# compiler from Microsoft, which was open sourced, a year ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
So I take huge advantage, not even huge advantage, I rely on those compilers. I am not going to write a compiler.
No.
As much as I love programming languages, that's not going to happen. So those are great. Those will take your text and convert them into assemblies, but we still have the fundamental problem on the iPad that you can't run a JIT. You can't dynamically execute code. And to get around that, I had to write an IL interpreter, basically another .NET runtime, and had to put that on there. But it's a funny runtime. That's a bad lead. It's a funny runtime.
Well, that's funny. So what are all the technologies you sort of mash together? So you mentioned Roslyn.
Yep.
What are some of the other pieces of this? Obviously, there's Xamarin involved.
Yeah, right. Okay. We'll start from the bottom up. Roslyn, we'll start there.
Right.
Then there's another project called the F# compiler service, which is the F# compiler, but made a little more Roslyn-like. It provides some text editor support, things like that. So you got those two base technologies, then throw in my third base technology, the interpreter. Throw on a UI now, and then compile all of that under Xamarin. And I say all of that in a very weird way because it's a lot of code. I'm bundling all of .NET, basically. I'm shipping .NET in this app, plus all of Xamarin's bindings to iOS. So you can do native programming in the same environment. Plus I throw in some NuGets and some other things. So it's a huge mess of code that gets compiled, literally hundreds of megabytes of code. But all compiled down to ARM, all very fast.
And you said that you wrote the IL interpreter, correct?
That's
so
right.
Was that the only challenge in getting around like Apple's rules? Because I know they're kind of tricky in what you can actually run on there. Because I know in the past, like you couldn't run emulators and some other things. I don't know exactly what the rules are.
Actually, tying back to our abstraction discussion and years of programming experience. You get to know Apple's rules. And so I've really internalized them. And so even when I'm conceiving of an app, I know what the app's capable.
Wake up in cold sweats at night.
Yeah, kind of. That's the experience paying off. So I had a pretty good understanding of what Apple allows and what they don't allow. So even in January, when I first started designing the app in my head, it was always designing with those rules in mind. And the interpreter gets you around that.
Which actually reminds me of, you had said, I think this was on Twitter, you had mentioned that then you had an update to it with all these great features and they were trying to classify it as a game or something?
As a health app.
Or health app. What happened there?
So the 1.0 of this app got approved in a day and a half. It was one of my fastest approvals ever. I'm like, great, good job, Apple.
Which I would not expect with this type of app. Exactly. I expect him to be like,
Okay, but then as all 1.0s have, it had its share of little bugs that somehow got out. And so I just had a bunch of
in your defense, like there were not that many. I mean, like I use this thing a lot. And it was pretty, even in 1.0 was pretty damn good, I have to admit.
That's because I used F#.
Okay. F#. No, okay. I
really appreciate that.
Doesn't have exceptions.
I didn't want to release a piece of junk. So this thing took me longer than I normally spend on apps because I wanted to make sure the quality was up there. So that's just work.
And then you wanted to submit the update.
Yeah, I wanted to submit the update, submitted the update, and they classified it as a health app and said that I'm not obeying all the rules of health apps. And so where I'm talking about I internalized rules, I never internalized the health app rules. It just never occurred to me.
You have to like enable GPS and
and
standing and sitting.
What they noticed was you could access health kit data from the app. And so they had to kind of do their own internal discussion of if this is allowed or not. Thankfully, after a couple phone calls with them, there was prior precedent for these kinds of apps, and they got through and they just magically approved it. But I'm also working on a technical solution, so I never have to go through that again.
Okay. So what are you using the health kit stuff for?
Nothing. I give you all of iOS access, and from the API, you can start hitting health stuff. So that's the
Oh,
issue.
so my app can do it. I didn't even think
This thing
about
lets
that.
you can touch the accelerometer. I mean, people always think
Yeah.
about the network, but there's a lot of hardware on these
I never
devices
even,
and a lot of data,
my app's just like,
reflection.
yeah, my app is just showing some information. I didn't even think of accessing sensors. That's freaking
Oh
cool.
yeah, yeah. It makes for fun demos. That's why I
Yeah.
added a bunch of plot libraries and things in the last update.
That's awesome.
I need to write better
I have to
examples.
look at your examples more. That's
Those
pretty.
ones are still a little boring. I'm going to work on some better
Okay,
ones.
okay, I gotcha.
But there is at
So-
least plotting now. Sorry.
So, the first thing that's really cool about continuous is just the fact that we can write in .NET on here. But the other part, like you mentioned, is just having that quick iterative cycle of real-time building / running. So can you tell us really what's going on behind the scenes in that a little bit more?
Sure. It uses the same build engine as Visual Studio does to give you IntelliSense. But Visual Studio is a little funny. It'll run a full compile your code in order to give you IntelliSense, but then when you tell it to build and run, it actually throws that away, runs the MS Build version, redoes all the work all over again.
Well, it's like my kids. I always tell them to like recheck their homework and like do the problem 2 different ways. Just wants to be sure.
Must love that.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, I need to do that same thing because I have code completion and that kind of stuff. The difference is I don't throw away that build. So I keep that build hot. I keep it lively. Like I said, I update it every third of a second whenever you stop, take a breath. I'll run a compile as fast as I can. And assuming that compile succeeds, it'll just start executing the assembly, but even that is a little weird because you don't always write console apps. In the case of a script, executing makes perfect sense. Just run the script. Console app, same difference. It just runs the console app. But for GUI apps, it's a little weirder to think, well, what do you actually mean by running? And that's why I introduced this whole other set. But just getting back to the main topic of that's what it's doing. Every keystroke, just watching that buffer, notices the change, rebuilds, reruns.
Is that time configurable?
No.
I think I saw that you can turn it off. The only reason I asked what popped into my head, because I honestly, I've used this thing probably for, I don't know, 10 to 12 hours now.
Awesome.
So the app that I have is actually screen scraping from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I started writing it like 2 days before the LinkedIn acquisition. Like there's going to be an easier way to get the data, but for right now, I figure I'm probably breaking their terms of service, but now that they're the same company, like it's probably okay. But anyway, so I'm in my app, it's going and pulling LinkedIn data, and it has to make that HTTP request. Well, now every time I hit a key, and like whatever, it still works fine. Actually, they haven't rate limited me yet, but I have to imagine like I'm every key press after a third of a second, it's going and making another HTTP call.
Correct. Well, hopefully it's a tiny bit slower than that because you're going to get throttled by their server. Just in the transmission time, I mean, not proper throttling.
Well, plus I just want to make sure that was actually what was happening because it's so
that's
so
basically
fast.
What's happening.
Okay, it's so
your
fast.
network is fast. I highly recommend enabling HTTP caching.
Okay.
So there's usually a little flag you can put on the client, and that'll save a lot of network bandwidth when you're doing that kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, there's basically 2 scenarios where this doesn't work too well, and that's accessing the network, and then the other one slips my mind. I don't know why I said 2, but it's anything CPU intensive also. So if I'm writing a ray tracer that takes a minute to run the scene, every keystroke, it's going to get annoying.
Yeah.
So there is a pretty quick option you can get to turn off. It'll still automatically build every time you type a character. It just won't run. And for that, you just have to press the play button manually. I had to put that just so I don't eat through all your network bandwidth or anything like
absolutely. So what cases did you have in mind whenever you're building this? I mean, so, you wanted to do your development on an iPad, but, like what types of apps did you want to make on here?
To be honest, I wasn't even thinking full apps in the very beginning. My first use case was I wanted to write controls, so like custom controls that you would put in your app, because what I was finding, that and GUI design, I found that those were the most frustrating times I had in the editor, where you want to change a color by a tiny little amount, and then you have to rebuild the whole app, re-execute it, okay, maybe a color should be in an external file, but whatever. You still have to go through this compile cycle every time you change a tiny little thing. And so it was mostly for GUI work that I just said, I want this instantaneous feedback kind of thing where I want it running as fast as I can, because I personally, I found I was taking shortcuts because I was getting so tired of the compile cycle. Like, okay, that blue is good enough. I wouldn't go for perfect blue. That was good enough.
Well, yeah, because of that whole cycle.
Oh, gosh.
I'll call it human unit tests.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish you could unit test that, but a lot of
well,
it's
no, what I was thinking is,
human.
back-end code, you're going to unit test it, and you're going to have it run all the time. For the front end, you couldn't do that, and you've basically made it so you can. So you're changing your code, and your unit test is, your eyes. So you basically now we're doing front end unit testing without all of the horrible things that come along with that.
Right. And the instantaneous feedback actually makes it feel like a designer instead of like you're coding. So I feel like I'm just using a really junky image editor that makes me type everything, but at least it's giving me real-time feedback.
That's funny. Because I've had people tell me like, oh, well, Visual Studio has a designer. And I'm like, no, that's a designer. Like, it's not the same thing. And you're not even guaranteed that it's going to look the same. Like, this is the same thing. I want to stress that to everybody. Like, the code that you're running, like, that's the code. It's being built, it's running on the device, and there's a little button too. So it's basically on an iPad. You'll see like the iPhone version on the side is what I like to think of it, because that's the size. And then you push this little button, it goes full screens. And now you have the iPad version, and you have a Pong game on there, and you can play. Like, that's not a designer. Like, you're playing the game.
Well, we can bring this all the way back to Joel Spolsky again. Everything goes back to Joel.
Yeah, it was centered around him.
He used to have a podcast. It used to be my favorite podcast. He said once in it that his problem with designers was that they were a static view of your application. And applications, GUIs, they're very dynamic.
Yep.
And so he said everything in Visual Basic eventually fell down to layering a bunch of things on top of each other, setting a bunch of hidden and, not visible, not this. But you're getting this weird static snapshot of your screen, and the benefits go away quite quickly once you get away from very simple GUIs. And so eventually you need interactivity, because this thing's dynamic. You need to see it running dynamically. A static shot's just not good enough.
Right, absolutely.
So you mentioned that you didn't initially envision this to be creating applications, but what kind of code really, I mean, obviously C#, F# code, but am I making like a Xamarin app? Is it console? Could I even do ASP.NET? I mean, what can I do with it today?
Well, I've since flipped on I wasn't going to be able to build big apps in it, because now I actually can. At least in the iOS world, your app is rooted in a root view controller. It's just kind of your main window. And you point this thing at that, and all of a sudden your app is running fully contained within this IDE. So you absolutely can do that now. Console apps, yep, it does console apps. They act just a lot like scripts. I guess I first started out with the scripting behavior because I thought, well, this is going to be fun for just jotting down fun ideas and just prototyping new ideas. And so scripting on it's kind of a first-class thing. You can just write CSX files and FSX files. Then when scripts get to be a little bit too long, you should turn those into console projects. Those are fine. I would say that it's not even the greatest for console projects, because you can't read from standard in or anything like that. So my big argument is go from script to a GUI app. It's 2016. Let's just write GUIs. We have a million libraries to do it. It's not so hard. So this thing bundles, like I said, all the iOS controls plus Xamarin Forms, which makes writing GUIs pretty simple. So I would say start at the script level, build up, and then just start putting a nice little GUI on it. So that would solve your problem of constantly doing the HTTP requests. If you just put a little Xamarin Forms thing there and a little button, and then on button click, do the HTTP request.
Okay.
But then you lose a little bit of your instantaneous feedback.
Yeah.
At least you can switch.
I'll just hammer LinkedIn servers. Like that's I'm just moving that problem over to them.
Well, this actually kind of leads into a whole nother design thing. Sorry, but I don't have a good way to preface that. Yeah. Scripts are fun, but scripts get annoying after a while. I always write my apps and before in an object-oriented way. I write a bunch of classes. The classes reference other objects, things like that. But sorry, I have to go back a tiny bit. There's another concept called a REPL, the read, eval, print loop. And I've always been intrigued by those because you could just type code in and get immediate feedback. But they assume a procedural style of things, like do this, then do that, then do this. Whereas I'm writing my code as objects. And so I just had no way to reconcile those two worlds, the scripting REPL world and this I'm declaring a bunch of classes world. And so a big feature that I'm quite proud of in the app is the watch window, which lets you navigate class declarations and then just new up objects in that class. And then you'll see like a debugger view of that object. You'll see all its properties.
Okay. I haven't even played with that, honestly.
Yeah, so if you just start declaring classes, like there's a class ball in the Pong example, but whatever, you can just start declaring classes. And then on top of that, it'll also show you methods in that class, and you can start calling methods in that object itself. And so this is a way to have entry points into an app that otherwise would never have entry points because it's a GUI, reactive, event-based app, not a script.
Cool. I'm just looking at that right now.
It's kind of the more advanced feature. I don't think a lot of people have fully clued in.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. It's like,
what's the feature that makes it usable professionally for me? It's what allows me to
I'm able to like navigate the whole stack. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You can load a large code base and just focus in on one area. So that's the kind of pro use of the app.
That is really cool. I'm gonna become a pro now. So I have kind of two related questions here. One is like, I guess the overarching question is, how do I incorporate this in my workflow? So the two sub questions are like, how do I get code in and out of it? And then not just that, like, and I can tell you how I've done it and it's probably really horrible. But then the other thing is, how do I actually, when I'm writing these, because right now I'm using like these CSX files, these script files, how do I actually get that into like my real code base? I can tell you how I've been doing it. You can tell me how wrong I am. But it's funny because I've been structuring it in such a way, like I have, for one of my GUIs, I actually have a function that will populate like the whole. It's basically a controller, and it takes in like an object, and then it also takes in basically the. I actually sent in a page stack, which is probably a bad way of doing it, or stack panel, or whatever it's called, and then it populates the entire screen and it raises events and all that kind of thing. So I can actually write that exact. I can have that exact controller in my CSX file, and then I can have some dummy data in there or whatever. And then what I do is I've been exporting that, and then I can just bring it into Xamarin on my computer, and I can
incorporate
it with the rest of my code.
Yep. So lots of options, none of which are perfect, unfortunately, right now. So the current version relies heavily on the built-in sharing parts of iOS.
Yeah.
So the options it gives you right now, let's say you wrote a file in the app, a green room, brand new file. You can send that to other apps as a file. And so if you have Dropbox on your device, or if you have SkyDrive or any of those, it'll just go there. And so me personally, that's how I tend to do things. I run in a weird way where I have Git repos under Dropbox. And so my Dropbox actually syncs all my source code also.
Okay.
So that way it actually works for me. But I understand not everyone's crazy enough like me. So there's a few more alternatives. A nice feature coming in iOS 10 and the latest Mac OS is a shared clipboard. So whenever I actually want to share files, I run the new version. You can just select stuff, say select all, copy it, switch over to your Mac, paste it in.
Oh, that would be nice, yeah.
The same thing works for AirDrop at the file level. Unlike instead of just sharing to another application, you can share to another computer. And so a lot of times I'll just send a whole file, like a CSX file or whatever, straight to another Mac, and then walk over to the Mac and pull the file down. So that works pretty well. Now, the one thing everyone's been wanting is Git support.
Psychic.
So let's just say Git is written in C, and it's been a pain in the butt to get onto the iPad.
So
it's been done.
2 weeks? Are you making that commitment on the show here?
That's what you're supposed to do, right?
I was going to say, this podcast isn't helping, is it? I'm sorry. We're keeping Frank from writing code that we all want.
I've gone through so many trials of it, though. So I have like the native version of Git running on iOS, but I'm very suspicious of it. I assume there's memory leaks everywhere.
You do not want to mess with somebody's Git repo.
I know, it's so important. Well, the good thing about Git is it's distributed. So if I download repo, technically, unless I start pushing crazily, I can't hurt it.
Right.
So it is safe-ish. I'm still freaked out by it.
Yeah.
Just making sure,
Yeah.
especially when I'm no Git expert. I understand how the database works, but anyway. So Git. Eventually Git, yes. I don't know the commitment time, though.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
No, that's perfectly fine.
There are Git apps, just put it out there. There's one called Working Copy on the iPad. And just like you can send files to and from Dropbox, you can send files to and from Git apps.
How do you bring in a file? I've seen how you send it out. How do you bring it in?
Sorry, I'm missing the come in dialog box. But what you can do is start in another app and send it to Continuous.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a little workflow that
I
most
never even
programmers
thought of
aren't
that. Okay, so
accustomed to.
it's like a shared target then.
Exactly. So if you were in a Git app, you could send over directories or
and
files.
what was the Git app that you mentioned?
Working Copy.
Working
It's a
Copy.
nice one. Nice. and
He's
fast.
downloading it right now in case you're not.
Of course. Yes, I am.
It's a good little app. I could do better to integrate with them, but at least I have very basic integration.
Oh, it's free, but there's in-app purchases. This is gonna.
It's pretty decent, the free version, but he only wants a couple bucks. Support the indies.
Okay. No, absolutely.
So
I'm just looking next to it. There's an enterprise one for $15, and that's a little pricey for me. Unless if I know that I'm using all the time, it's no problem. But
no, the in-app purchase is the way I went.
okay.
So speaking of supporting indie developers, what has been your support from the community? Because I remember seeing it on day one, and I'd immediately clicked what I could do with this. So I downloaded it, gave you your $10 or $9.99, whatever it is. But how has the reaction been as a whole for you?
Super positive. There's always one or two people saying, "Why would you want to program on an iPad?" But it's literally just been a couple people. Everyone else, at least my friends, have been very positive. I think it was definitely a little bit of an itch. A lot of .NET developers own iPads, and I don't know, maybe I'm just too much in love with programming, but if I like programming and I like iPads, why don't I want them together? So I think it did actually resonate with a lot of people. And so I got a lot of good feedback. Fortunately, it was a solid release too, so I didn't have too many bug reports on the day one. Of course, F# people found bugs because they're F# people.
You are one, so you can say that.
I guess. I don't. They write code that even I. Oh gosh, this one gentleman sent me a test case or some code that wasn't working, and I had to stare at it for a good 5 minutes before I even understood what the code was supposed to do, let alone figure out what my app was doing that wasn't executing it correctly. But aside from that, yeah, lots of interest, lots of positivity.
Very cool. So, final question: What's on the roadmap? Just you can quietly, just between us.
It's just Git. Once I do Git, I'm done. I'm leaving.
Yeah, he just drops the mic, and there you go.
No, I have some pet features that I want for myself. So these are my own. I want like Clojure support, and I might want like some Python or something. So as a programming language geek, I just want some more languages in it.
Okay.
I do have to spend a lot of time improving the text editor. There's just a lot of little things that I want to be able to, that I find I'm still more efficient on a desktop computer because it's missing these few little things. So that includes refactorings. It includes dumb things like toggle comments, move this block of code here, a good integrated search. So there's just a lot of text editor improvements that I want to make just to make it really feel at home so I can feel like I'm really doing good work on it.
Here's an exercise for the listener. Everybody go out there and review if you try this app, review it. I feel bad because like the one is 5 stars. The other one's only 3 stars. It's just because you don't have Git support.
I know.
Come on.
Really want
Do not give bad reviews with feature requests.
It's just classic iOS review.
I know.
4 stars. I love your app. It
your app is
my life.
Yeah.
I found my wife because of your app. But it doesn't have my favorite cat in it.
4 stars.
4 stars.
4. I think you're being nice.
Yeah, you're right.
I've seen 1-star reviews like that. So, or it'll be like some stupid question like, I bought a new iPad. How do I download it again? 1 star.
Fortunately, I've been doing this for 8 years. I have developed a semi-thick skin. Sometimes my day can still be ruined by reviews like that, but not too much anymore.
Okay.
But I appreciate it. Yes, please go review. Reviews really help. And if you didn't know, reviews really help independent developers. Yeah. So if you find an app that you like, don't assume it's by some big corporation full of nameless people. Go review it. It really helps us out. Yeah. And that way we don't have to put those nag screens in the app.
I'm working on it. I'm gonna.
Oh, thank you.
I don't want to type it here while I'm talking.
Put some thought into it.
Okay, let's get into the Azure pick of the week. So this is a quick one, but Azure Active Directory B2C is generally available in North America. So B2C, have you been working with B2C, Carl?
I personally haven't, but I know where I work, there's a few people that specialize in identity stuff, and they have been geeking out over the preview of it for a long time.
So it integrates with, with all these like third-party identity providers. So if you want to authenticate with like Facebook or Google, or I don't even know what the list is, this is what actually does that. It's a really awesome service. They're just killing it with all the Active Directory stuff. They just need to keep moving forward and keep bringing us cool stuff because it's awesome. So I wanted to mention that. And then we have, I just threw this in there, Carl, so you might not have even seen it, but
I've been using it.
Okay. I added an app of the week, and I think it's just iPhone, right?
Yes.
So it's actually an iPhone app. It's called Pix, Pix. So it's by Microsoft. This thing is amazing. So it's
an alternate camera app.
Yep.
That it kind of just does a bunch of like auto optimizations. It kind of like deterministically figures out what's the best picture. And for me, what's the coolest thing is that it's really, they put some design work into this to make it easy to compare to the original photo that you would have taken without it, just to like prove to yourself like, oh, this is better. And I haven't seen it like not do an amazing job. I've taken several dozen pictures with it, and every one it's like, wow, these are way better.
So it's actually buffering pictures. So it's going, I don't know if it's doing like video or how it's doing it, but it continuously takes pictures. It actually tries to analyze it, tries to take it at the right time. And then it also does this an amazing job with the lighting. Cause I've always used like Facebook and like Google, and they all have this like magic fixing thing, right? Where you push it and it's just like, we fixed your image and it looks like crap. Like 90% of the time, it looks worse to me. This is the first time I've actually seen it work well. I don't know. I have a whole bunch of pictures here. I don't really need to show a detailed picture of this, but it's a picture of my daughter with Anna and Elsa. And so I just took this, would have been yesterday. And we're in a shadow. And in the back, it was the sun, and it was, shining brightly. And normally what you get is it's real dark. And in here, you can see their faces perfectly. So there's some examples on on their website. So Carl will find those and link to them. So you can see sort of the before and after. But it's amazing. I mean, it's not like as convenient as the built-in camera, but I took a lot of pictures of my daughter for her birthday. And it was like, of course, my wife didn't warn me ahead of time, so I didn't bring my camera. So I just had my phone. But I used this app, and they turn out way better than what they would have normally. And like you said, you can do the comparison, and it was pretty obvious. Okay, what's your dev tip of the week?
So I have two. The first one is because by the time the show comes out, Windows Anniversary Edition will be out.
Woohoo!
And I know a lot of, especially devs out there, they like to just kind of like wipe out a machine and just get it back to a new state with all the new OS bits on there. And in order to get it back,
I love how enthusiastic Frank was. He's like,
"Oh yeah, it's the only way to go."
Yep. So I use Box Starter, and it uses Chocolatey to just kind of like you give it a script that has all of the apps that you want installed, and it just kind of just chugs through them. If there's reboots, it'll reboot and get right back to it. And I'll also include links to my Box Starter, and I know Jason, you have a Box Starter out on GitHub as well.
Mine's on
it. What's really cool about it is you don't have to install anything first. There's a command line that you essentially give it. It goes to boxstarter.org, and it references whatever gist that you put in there, and it'll install everything all on its own, including itself, which is kind of mind-blowing, even as a developer.
Yeah.
Always SHA tags, I hope.
So the second dev tip of the week is, of course, a Visual Studio extension from Mads Christensen. But this one's kind of meta. It's called the Web Extension Pack, and this extension installs all of the other web extensions that you might want if you're a web developer. So it's an extension that installs extensions. It's awesome.
This guy, there's like this handful of developers, and I think Frank is in this group too, because I've seen some of his other work. They're just like mad scientists. I just can't believe like how many, this pump out like these just amazing things like all the freaking time. I'm so jealous.
Well, they made it so easy to distribute things. Now, why not distribute every little project? You're right.
Because one thing we didn't mention, and totally off topic, is like you have an app called iCircuit. Mm-hmm. And so one of the people at Microsoft that I actually mentioned this app, I showed him Continuous. They said, "Oh, that reminds me of this app where it does like the circuits in real time." And then I didn't even realize that you did that. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds cool. I'll have to look that up." I go look, I'm like, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are the odds of that?
I'm very impatient. I like things to run while you work on them.
Yeah, but your app like has it like they can tell who wrote it just by like just by like feeling it.
I'm gonna take that as a compliment for now, but
it's cool. It's cool. Like you're the ghost in the machine.
Just wait for 20 more years and you'll be real creeped out.
Yeah. Okay, you're done with your dev tips of the week there, Carl?
Yes.
Overachiever. So Frank, we play a game on this show. I need you to pick a number between 1 and 4 inclusive.
3.
Okay. Would you rather have 14 fingers or 16 toes?
Me, personally?
Yeah.
I can't, this isn't the royal you. I'm going to go with, wow. When you really think about it, I mean, do I want to be better at, my fingers are kind of useless. So
well, you're a developer.
You just use one at a time, in the
though,
Matrix when they had a lot of fingers, right? Or one of those sci-fi shows. They had too many fingers, and it really creeped me out. So I'm going with the toes.
That way you can hide it.
I was actually thinking swimming because I was doing some swimming recently. I thought maybe it'd give me a better kick.
There you go.
And I've been doing hiking and just have.
Now there are people with 6 fingers, right?
Yeah.
Do they have does it work?
I assume it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well. I wonder if
all your fingers are kind of joined. Your nervous system. A lot of your fingers are joined anyway, so I think we could definitely handle 14.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like you'd probably almost want like a specialized keyboard. Although I guess that might work out pretty well actually.
I'm not a proper typist anyway, so I just have to invent yet another style.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, but you'd cover up. I mean, what I really need is like 26 fingers, and maybe like some of the common symbols in.
There's some sci-fi show, very classic, where just more and more fingers come out. Maybe it was Ghost in the Shell.
Oh boy. Okay, Carl, pick a number.
I'll take number 1.
Okay. Okay, here we go. In a basketball game, would you? Okay, let me start over. In a basketball game with you and 4 friends against a pro basketball team, would you rather be able to replace one of your teammates with Batman or with Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
I love how oddly specific it is. Yeah, but can Batman can he bring like extra gear to the court?
Gear in a game like that just seems like it would get in the way. Whereas Spider-Man, that's all dexterity and
endurance.
And people are just going to get hurt if Batman's playing. That's
true. That's true. Like he hit the guy with his armor.
Unless he showed up as like John Wayne or Bruce Wayne and just throwing money around.
I'm open.
Then everyone lets him take the layups. They're like, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Wayne.
I'm Batman. Anyway, with that, okay. So where can people find you, Frank?
Twitter is usually the best place. I have kind of a funny username. It's Praeclarum, Praeclarum.
Okay.
Wow. Hopefully it'll be in the show notes so you don't have to type that out. I have a blog at the same thing, praeclarum.org, and I basically go by that name everywhere. But more importantly, GitHub. Go check out my open source projects, throw me some pull requests, throw me some issues. I love that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter as well at Carl Schweitzer.
You can find me at ytechie.com or on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So thank you so much for coming on here and talking about Continuous. This is so cool. And I can't wait to see what else you're working on. This is just such cool stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a blast.